Welcome back to The Line. This week, the state settled with Southwest Counseling Center for less than $500 in overbilling for Medicaid. The center was one of 15 behavioral health providers that had their Medicaid payments frozen by the Martinez administration in 2013. And those providers all stopped serving clients, and some even went out of business during the investigation. All were later cleared, however, of criminal wrongdoing. And Tom, the difference in the original allegation of $2.8 million in settling for, what was the amount, $480 something, whatever it was.
$485.
That's amazing to me. I mean, that is really quite something. But what does that say about the overall situation? Is this complete innocence, or what happened here? That's amazing.
So what happened here was it's a total miscarriage of justice, because you had an entire witch hunt which took place as a result of a third party, a company out of Boston did a survey. They said, well, based on, providing this much service, you should have this much in fraud. And so therefore everybody's wrong.
That's right.
And so that created this cascade. They just assumed that everybody was, screwing the people with mental health issues. Right. And that's sickening, because, they, as a result, you had all these people who didn't get the care that they needed. And it has impacted our economy, it's impacted our society, and even the companies now that are being brought in, or that were brought in from Arizona and elsewhere, they say, you know what, we're out, And so here we are, many years later, in the same position that we were, when this all started, and it didn't have. It could be even worse.
It's really quite
really sad.
When you think about that, again, settling for that amount of money, it's an insult to the public in a way, because they put us over the rack here in the state for a couple of years over this. If you think about it, we were, a lot of us assumed there were problems there with this, and now we know there wasn't. So.
About 15 agencies were destroyed, went out of business. This is the infrastructure of the provision of mental and behavioral health services.
That's right.
Apparently, about 1,600 jobs were lost. The most fragile population in the state that doesn't like to see changes in its treatment plan. Records were lost, and it was all based on claims. Based on extrapolations.
Right. The math was ridiculous.
But there was a big innuendos and accusations of corruption and fraud, specifically against Roque Garcia, who was the head of this agency that has now been found to have, overbilled by $485, as opposed to the millions that they said they did. So his reputation has been destroyed, and the people who need these services are out in the cold. I mean, it's now apparently 23% of those people who need the services are getting them.
That's right.
And that has big repercussions in terms of crime, in terms of medical care, and it's a perfect storm, especially with Medicaid cuts coming down the pike, and now there's no services to treat these folks. It's a real crisis, and I think it's made worse by the fact that these people did not get due process. They did not get due process.
That's right.
There was a bill in the legislature that would have provided due process, that would have defined what is a credible allegation of fraud, and it was vetoed. It passed unanimously in the House. It's like a bipartisan recognition that this is a really big problem, but the governor still has her head buried in the sand.
It's really quite something, Laura, when you think about it. I mean, we've got other litigants out there. Folks are still litigating this on their own behalf. It's not over for everybody, and not everybody went out of business. But to Dee Dee's point, it's hard to put a value on reputation and how to earn that back. It's a very hard thing to do over the years. So what do you think about for the folks who are still litigating this? How does this settlement affect what's coming up for those situations?
Well, I mean, the public perception, of course, is that if they didn't find any, only $500 worth of wrongdoing, perhaps, or that's what they settled, that these other ones will also, there will be a low settlement for that. But That's the public perception. I think legally it comes down to the facts in that
Okay.
particular case. So it's hard to sort of say because this settled for 500, then this one will also settle for some low amount.
Right.
A settlement indicates that there wasn't enough to be able to pursue that larger amount. So to go from a $2.8 million claim down to a $500 settlement really means that there wasn't enough there. So to be able to bring a suit in the first place, or to be able to dismiss them that way. I think what happened is, the administration jumped the gun in terms of pulling the Medicaid funding when they did, and then basically deep sixed them very quickly,
Right.
And that created major havoc that I think we're still recovering from as a community.
That's right.
On the issue of the extrapolation, what I've learned more recently, and I should disclose that we have a client at my firm that I'm working with where the extrapolation issue, the statistics is actually a known and understood method that the feds use to determine claims.
Oh, so-
So what I found interesting, because my knowledge of it had been, from the program and the stuff that we had talked about here and what we read publicly, it seems so far-fetched, I think, to us, especially as an attorney, to say, these claims come down based on extrapolation and statistics. But actually, the federal government, and specifically CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, use that method themselves when they're basically alleging to a provider, you've been possibly overpaid on some of these Medicare claims because you've got a certain sample of payments that just don't jive with what it
Sure.
should be. And therefore, we're going to extrapolate into this larger amount.
Right.
And then that launches an audit, and that then is where you get into the specifics. And I think what happened here is they use the extrapolation, that initial, here's what we think is going to happen, as fact to pull funding. And that's not what the feds do. They launch an audit, there's procedural steps that have to happen. And here we had somebody sort of jumping the gun
Right.
administratively and saying, we're just going to pull all funding and immediately bring in out-of-state companies.
Right.
And for an economy that we have, which is fragile, we're still recovering, that means a lot of local businesses and people who had long experience, a lot of experience, a lot of employees,
right.
a lot of good reputation, as you mentioned. They just basically were left out in the cold. And we're talking about now a vacuum situation where we're trying to piecemeal, how do we address this issue? And I think, the program that you all did in the last few weeks on this issue was really interesting. And particularly when talking about how a lot of those clients are unknown at this point. Like some of them, there was no continuity in terms of their care, and there were no records that were kept from one company to another.
right.
And therefore, some of them may not have received the care, maybe out there in the cold, maybe some of the homeless and mentally ill people that we see around the state.
That's right.
And that's a real crisis, I think,
right.
public crisis.
Hearkening to the segment we just did about downtown, this is all part of it, Dan. Interestingly, when you think about Dee Dee and Laura both brought up Medicaid, we've got on the horizon potentially Medicaid cuts here in our state of New Mexico. Just going to delve off a little bit. What would happen to our services if Medicaid even took a slight ding for the folks that we do have left doing these things? Are we going to be out in the dark again? I mean,
I can't answer that because the business models, to some extent, it's created an opportunity for entrepreneurship, right? Because these people need to be assisted. There's
Sure.
going to be an opportunity to have startups, but that's not necessarily what you want when you're dealing with people with mental illnesses, right? You don't want brand new people in the field. I think the thing that I got to say, Gene, that's the most disturbing to me is the actions by this administration now staying quiet. They were quick to get to the front of the media and talk about all of this stuff. I think there's going to be some serious questions that have to be answered.
Right.
And I think someone should be getting with this administration and saying just being quiet's not the way to go about this. What happened here is clearly a travesty of justice. When you allege someone committed $2.8 million worth of fraud and you settle for less than $500, I'm sure there's going to be people that say, yeah, but we found fraud.
That's right.
But you found fraud at what expense? You found $500 worth of fraud at losing thousands of jobs, people without the coordination of care that they need. And I got to tell you, I think, as I've said at this table before, I think the police issue and crime in Albuquerque is the legacy of R.J. Berry. This may wind up being the legacy of Governor Martinez.
Fair enough.
This is a bad situation in a state where we are constantly at the top of all the bad lists when it comes to be able to provide mental health, we talk about being able to get access to services, as rural as we are, when you start reading the stuff and see who was truly affected by this stuff, everybody was affected. I don't want to
heartbreaking.
downplay it,
That's right.
but it's the guy in Carlsbad, it's the guy in Sandia Park, it's the guy in the small town that now you're going to ask these people to go get their services 80, 90, 100 miles away, and most of these folks, it was hard enough to get them to go 4 blocks to get the services.
That's right.
They're not going to travel. So I think at the end of the day, this administration on this issue has a lot to ask about. And I'm going to tell you as a voter, if the legislature doesn't find out, they should be held accountable.
There you go. When we come back to the line, we'll talk about what's at stake for New Mexico as Congress considers changes in the Affordable Care Act.